up, Chinese President Xi Jinping pays a state visit to Vietnam with a focus on cooperation, security, and strengthening ties. Dozens of babies from Gaza have been transferred to Egyptian hospitals for treatment and incubation. Plus, COP28 climate talks in Dubai are extended as parties fail to reach a consensus on a fossil fuel phase-out. Welcome to The World Today on CGTN. I'm Li Qiuyuan coming to you live in Beijing. Our top story this hour, General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee and Chinese President Xi Jinping has started his two-day state visit to Vietnam. The Chinese Foreign Ministry says the trip is aimed at enhancing strategic cooperation between the two sides, building on the strength of their friendship. CGTN's Wang Hao has our top story.
Vietnam rolled out the red carpet on Tuesday for Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee and Chinese President, as he began his first state visit to the Southeast Asian nation since 2017. His visit came as the socialist neighbors celebrate the 15th anniversary of their comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership. In written remarks released upon his arrival, Xi Jinping said he expects to have an in-depth exchange of views with Vietnamese leaders on strategic matters critical to the future of the two parties and two countries. International and regional issues of common concern are also on the agenda. Following his arrival, President Xi was given a warm welcome on the streets of Hanoi. Xi Jinping was received by Nguyen Phu Trong, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam Central Committee, at Hanoi's Presidential Palace. There he attended a welcoming ceremony chaired by Tong and was honored with a 21-gun salute. The latest face-to-face meeting between the two leaders took place in October last year when Tong paid a visit to Beijing. During his meeting with Tong in Hanoi, Xi Jinping said China-Vietnam ties will enter a new stage through joint efforts. He said China firmly supports Vietnam's cause of socialist construction and has seen ties with Vietnam from a strategic and long-term perspective. He said China takes its relations with Vietnam as a priority in its neighborhood diplomacy and stands ready to build a China-Vietnam community with a shared future. Both sides also jointly witnessed the signing of cooperation documents. Following his meeting with Tong, President Xi is scheduled for talks with Vietnamese President Vo Van Thuong, Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh, and Chairman of the National Assembly Vuong Dinh Hue.
Ahead of the visit, Vietnam's Nhan Dan newspaper published a signed article by President Xi Jinping. In the article, President Xi said the two sides have conducted exchanges with mutual trust, enhanced common interests with mutually beneficial cooperation, grown closer through friendly exchanges, and treated each other with sincerity. He said China hopes the two nations will promote the building of a China-Vietnam community with a shared future that carries strategic significance. President Xi highlighted the need for strategic communication and leveraging complementary strengths to achieve this goal. He suggested accelerating synergizing the Belt and Road Initiative and two corridors in one economic circle strategy, as well as expanding cooperation in connectivity, state-owned enterprise reform, green energy, and critical minerals. Additionally, President Xi stressed the importance of friendly exchanges, managing differences effectively, and expanding consensus between the two countries. He also proposed increasing direct flights to encourage more tourists to visit Vietnam. China and Vietnam have maintained deep political, economic, and cultural ties. Over the years, both countries have witnessed frequent high-level exchanges and breakthroughs in practical cooperation, bolstering relations along the way.
Leaders of both China and Vietnam have established solid political trust to chart the course for the future growth of bilateral relations. In January 2017, at the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam Central Committee Nguyen Phu Trong paid a 4-day official visit to China. During Trong's visit, China and Vietnam issued a joint communique pledging to manage maritime differences and safeguard the peace and stability of the South China Sea. Both sides also encouraged cooperation on economy and trade, defense, security, and law enforcement, cultural exchanges, among others. In November 2017, Chinese President Xi paid a state visit to Vietnam. During President Xi's visit, a memorandum of understanding was signed on the joint implementation of the China Proposed Belt and Road Initiative and Vietnam's 2 corridors and 1 economic circle plan. Nguyen Phu Truan's latest visit to China was made in 2022. During Truan's visit, President Xi held talks with Truan at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. Both sides released a joint statement on further strengthening and deepening the comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership between the 2 countries. The 2 sides agreed to keep the mechanism of the China-Vietnam Steering Committee for bilateral cooperation to coordinate planning and promote exchanges, and cooperation between the 2 countries in foreign affairs, defense, security, and law enforcement.
For more on this, let me bring in Dr. Du Lan, Deputy Director of the Department for Asia Pacific Studies at the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome to the program, Dr. Du. Now, in the talks between President Xi and Truan, Xi said China has always seen Vietnam as a priority when it comes to diplomacy with neighboring countries. What's the meaning behind this message?
Yes, we know that China and Vietnam has a long history of friendly exchanges, and the 2 countries have the same political systems, similar ideals and beliefs, and similar development paths. We also have extensive common interests. Therefore, China has always attached great importance to developing relations with Vietnam, and Vietnam also regards developing relations with China as a strategic choice and top priority. And this year marks the 15th anniversary of the establishment of comprehensive strategic partnership between China and Vietnam. And bilateral relations between the 2 countries become increasingly mature, and the political relations and the practical cooperation have reached a new level. So now it is the time to promote the bilateral relations to a further level. So I think this is the most important significance of this visit. And President Xi Jinping's special state visit to Vietnam demonstrates China's cherishment of the friendship with Vietnam and highlights China's emphasis on improving the new positioning of bilateral relations, and conveys China's commitment to work with Vietnam to maintain the region and even the world stability and prosperity.
And China has long been Vietnam's largest trading partner, and Vietnam is China's top trading partner within ASEAN. How would you assess the interdependence of supply chains and commerce between the 2 countries?
Yes, Vietnam is not only China's biggest trading partner within ASEAN countries, but also China's 4th largest trading partner in the world. The bilateral trade volume has existed $200 billion for the last 2 years. So the economies of China and Vietnam are at a different stage of development, and their trade exchanges and industrial structure are complementary. It should be said that complementary is far greater than the competition. The industry and the supply chains between the 2 countries are very close, and the bilateral trade products are effectively promoted the development of relative industries in both countries. China is also Vietnam's largest export market for agricultural products. In the first 10 months of this year, Vietnam's fruit and vegetables exports to China increased by 165%. Therefore, China and Vietnam are highly interconnected and highly complementary in terms of economic cooperation. Their interests are increasingly integrated, which has brought also tangible benefits for both countries and their peoples.
Yeah, and China and Vietnam are geographically connected. They share similar cultures. What effect does that have on the state of relations between both countries?
Yeah, now China and Vietnam, we know, are socialist neighbors. They are also communicating with shared future that carries strategic significance. Both China and Vietnam are advancing their socialist modernization courses. Both regard China and Vietnam relations as the priority direction of their foreign policies, and both regard the other's development as an opportunity for their own development. The top leaders of the two parties and the two countries have always maintained close communication on expanding and deepening practical cooperation in various fields from a strategic perspective, and established high-level cross-department coordination mechanisms such as the Steering Committee for Bilateral Cooperation, which just held 2 weeks ago. So the two countries have synergized development strategies, deepening cooperation in areas such as economy, trade, investment, and infrastructure construction, and people exchanges between the two countries are also close. So more and more young Vietnamese come to China for study. It can be said that now the bilateral relations is in the best period. With President Xi Jinping's visit this time, the political mature trust and practical cooperation between China and Vietnam will be further deepened.
All right, Dr. Du Lan, thank you so much for sharing your analysis and insights with us. Appreciate it. Well, Dongxing is on the China-Vietnam border, and it's been a focal point for exchanges between the two nations for generations. The small town once served as a vital transit hub for overseas Chinese in Southeast Asia, helping them to mail letters and goods to their homeland. CGTN's reporter Liu Jiaxin travels to the border town to learn about its unique history.
A small building with Nanyang-style architecture stands as a testament to the historical memory of Dongxing Post Road, where time slows down, capturing an important chapter in the culture of Qiaopi. Qiaopi is a historical form of mail that serves as a letter and remittance that Chinese overseas send back to China via financial or postal institutions. And these are the mails dating back as early as 1940s via China-Vietnam border.
After the Pacific War broke out in 1942, the entirety of Southeast Asia fell. All the letters from Hong Kong to Shantou were interrupted. We overseas Chinese risked our lives to open up this new route.
During China's war of resistance against the Japanese aggression, Qiaopi, originating from Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and various other locales, were transported through this winding path located quite near the China-Vietnam border. Well, this passage saved a large number of Chinese lives during the war and famine, and the road known locally as the Lifeline also bears the witness to the mutual support and profound friendship between China and Vietnam. As a witness to this historical period, Lin Huijiang recalls every section of the road that was used to transport mail from Southeast Asia to China. In an era where logistics and transfers are fast and convenient, the month-long journey for letters and supplies seems unimaginable.
你看，在我们的西贡县，从越南西贡运到我们国内，运到全部各地，那这些都全部靠这个越南给我们这个大力的支持。
Letters filled with thoughts and responsibilities were placed in small bamboo baskets and sent to thousands of households. Lin believes the road embraces the ideals of life and friendship and has left a valuable legacy for the development of China-Vietnam relations. 刘嘉欣 CGTN 东兴广西壮 Autonomous Region.
Well, many people in Vietnam have expressed hope that President Xi Jinping's visit will promote China-Vietnam cooperation across various fields, highlighting the friendship shared by the two countries.
Vietnam and China are neighboring countries connected by mountains and rivers. The friendship between the people of the two countries has been passed down from generation to generation. 2023 marks the 15th anniversary of the establishment of a comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership between Vietnam and China. President Xi's visit to Vietnam is of great significance. I hope this visit will promote deeper and more practical cooperation in various fields between the two countries and will promote the development of Vietnam-China relations to a new level.
High-level exchanges between Vietnam and China guided the development of bilateral relations. Cultural exchanges promote mutual understanding between the people of the two countries. I eagerly look forward to the positive results from President Xi's visit.
Vietnam Communist Party and the government of Vietnam pay very high attention to the cooperation and friendship to China. and the Vietnamese people are very much welcome the visit of President Xi Jinping. The visit will be an important milestone for further development, for cooperation, for friendship, for peaceful development in Southeast Asia.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities, reinvent, find new opportunities, discover a path forward. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. At least 20 people, including 7 children, have been killed after the bombing of Rafah city by Israeli forces. Israel has also conducted raids in different parts of the West Bank, including Jenin, where 4 Palestinians have been killed. Meanwhile, the IDF says that 20 of its soldiers killed in the Gaza Strip were killed due to friendly fire or accidents. The UN General Assembly will again vote later today on a resolution to an immediate humanitarian ceasefire after the U.S. used its veto to halt a ceasefire call last Friday. More than 18,000 Palestinians have been killed since October 7th. Israel's death toll remains at roughly 1,200. A coalition of Palestinian factions have called for an international strike on December 11th to demand an immediate ceasefire and to support Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Jung Sung-woo visited Bethlehem in the West Bank to get a better understanding of the public sentiment there.
This is Bethlehem in the West Bank. We actually were here yesterday, and there were a lot of people walking around, doing their business, talking to their friends or families. But today, as you can see, all restaurants and shops are closed, except for some grocery stores and pharmacies. And we'd also like to speak to some of the civilians about the strike.
It's like an expression of refusing what's going on in Gaza and Gaza Strip, the genocide that our people are going through, that, you know, the killing of children, the killing of women. So, and it seems like, you know, it's been a call on the international level, you know, for such a strike and to show the Palestinians that they are not alone. Even, you know, the bombarding Gaza, everything what's going on in Gaza has not resulted anything positive for Israel, except for killing only civilians. So the civilians are paying the price.
In this situation, there is no any good result in that. This thing, the strike here, but only. At least the people here, they are trying to share them with the people in Gaza, because they cannot do anything. Even if you want to go to visit Gaza, you cannot go.
I think this is the only thing we can do for our people in the Gaza Strip.
Shops, restaurants, schools were also shut down across eastern Jerusalem and the occupied West Bank. A rally was held in Ramallah in solidarity with the people in Gaza, and people of all ages took part in it. Jung Sung, CGTN, Bethlehem.
Since the conflict broke out, Palestinian infants have been among the most vulnerable in Gaza. Dozens of babies have been transferred to Egyptian hospitals. The new administrative hospital in Cairo is leading these efforts. CGTN's Adel El-Maroui has the latest.
Palestinian infants struggling to breathe inside their incubators, fighting for their lives. Some here are a few weeks old. Despite their fragile conditions, they had to travel for hundreds of kilometers to come all the way here to Egypt's new administrative capital.
We have here about 19 cases of premature infants. Thanks God, about 0.5% of these cases started to be totally cured. We have a small child here 3 years old. He got a critical case, losing his both limbs due to bombing. This child admitted to us about 10 days ago. Every day, we are receiving more cases, and we prepared to receive more and more cases.
Sausan Abu Amshi couldn't leave her newborn. She's one of a handful of mothers who came with their children here.
I gave birth during the war. They took my baby to the incubator. Then Al Shifa Hospital ran out of power. Al Shifa was bombed. They evacuated us and the communication was cut with my child. They moved them to other hospitals, from there to Egypt. Now they're getting better. But I left my family and my husband in Gaza. I hope to see them soon.
Many of these babies will open their eyes, unaware that their mothers are stuck in a heavily bombarded Palestinian-occupied territory. Others will never see their mothers. Ahmed Shabat survived 3 Israeli bombings. He lost his parents and most of his siblings in the first, one of his uncles in the second, and both his legs in the third.
His psychological state is very bad. It is too much for a 3-year-old child to lose his entire family. His uncle gets killed before his eyes and both his legs get amputated. Only a very difficult future he will face. My 1.5-year-old daughter is still in Gaza. She too is seeing people getting killed. And the bombings that are making buildings collapse. That's very tough on a child.
Doctors here are more concerned about the psychological trauma Palestinian children face rather than their physical injuries. Luckily, all the services they need are available here. This is the biggest and the newest hospital in the new Egyptian capital. It is equipped with a good team and some of the most advanced equipment. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, from the new Egyptian administrative capital.
It is the third and final day of voting in Egypt's presidential elections. Approximately 45% of eligible voters cast their ballots by the end of the second day. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who is running for a third term in office, is widely expected to win the race. Sisi won the presidential elections in 2014 and 2018, each time with 97% of the vote. The official results of this year's vote are to be announced next Monday. And the COP28 climate summit in Dubai is hurtling toward overtime, with the draft text of the final deal yet to be reached. Many nations slammed Monday's proposed draft deal as it omitted a phase-out of fossil fuels. COP28 Director General Majid Al-Suwaidi said the COP28 presidency, currently held by the United Arab Emirates, was aiming for, quote, a historic result that included the mention of fossil fuels, adding that it was still up to other countries to agree. If successful, this would be the first UN climate summit to explicitly mention the reduction of all fossil fuels. Our Yasser Hakim in Dubai has more on the final talks at the summit.
So far, everyone is still waiting for a new text draft to be issued anytime today. We understand that they are now negotiating a new draft with the COP presidency. Now, this draft should be in the next few hours, and then it will go through another phase of negotiation. So the next draft is not expected to be the final one. One of the surprising events today is that one of the countries that had been staunch protesters of the draft, the UK, the secretary has left the COP, and he went back to London, and it was a kind of surprise in the middle of the critical talks at the last moments. He's the leading the UK delegation. He left back to the UK, as we know, is for some vote to do with Parliament. Whether he will be back or not is considered a loss for the Europeans, who are the ones leading the criticism or the opposition to the draft and trying to find a new draft where the fossil fuels issue. This is the whole sticking point, adding the fossil fuels phase down into the text. So it's just a waiting game today to see what will happen. Like I said, there will be a second draft. This second draft will be discussed, we believe, even from past COPs, that it will go on throughout the night. And maybe we'll have a final resolution by tomorrow morning.
The U.S. House of Representatives could reportedly formalize its impeachment inquiry of President Joe Biden this week. The report by Reuters news agency cites a Republican lawmaker who attended a closed-door meeting with House Speaker Mike Johnson. The vote is expected to occur the day House members are scheduled to leave Washington for a year-end holiday break of more than 3 weeks. House Republicans accuse the Democratic president and his family of improperly profiting from policy decisions Biden participated in while serving as vice president during former President Barack Obama's administration. The U.S. Supreme Court has been urged to launch a fast-track review of former President Donald Trump's claim that he cannot be tried on federal charges of trying to overturn his 2020 election defeat. The request was launched by a special counsel prosecuting Donald Trump. Now, the Supreme Court has ordered Trump's lawyers to respond to the request by next Wednesday. Trump contends that this case and 3 other criminal prosecutions he faces are politically motivated. Our Sean Calebs has more.
It all comes really down to one key issue. Does Donald Trump have immunity from prosecution for alleged crimes committed while he was the U.S. president? Special counsel Jack Smith is looking to resolve 2 important issues before the case is heard in appeals in federal court. Now, he wants to try Trump and wants the high court to make a decision quickly so Trump can go on trial in Washington, D.C. on March 4th. An earlier decision went against Trump when federal judge Tanya Chutkan ruled Trump is not protected by immunity. Chutkan admonished the former president, saying he was trying to, quote, usurp the reins of government. She also added there is no reason at all, nothing at all, that would keep Trump allow him to be immune from prosecution for violating a federal criminal law. Now, this would be the first time the U.S. Supreme Court would weigh in on a decision involving the criminal prosecution of the ex-president. But first, the Supreme Court must decide if it will even hear the case. The justices could decide the case must be heard in federal court firstly. It is highly unusual to skip the federal appeals court asking the Supreme Court to decide an important matter that is fundamental to the prosecution of the case. For his part, Donald Trump is claiming his actions after the results of the 2020 election were part of his official duty as president, and therefore he should be granted immunity. Trump's legal team also alleges that the former president should not be tried because he was already acquitted by the U.S. Senate during his impeachment trial, and taking him to court again would be double jeopardy. Smith wants a ruling by December 18th to keep his appeals trial on track to begin March 4th. That date, of course, would be right as the 2024 presidential race is kicking into high gear and would be a constant reminder of Trump's actions while serving as commander-in-chief.
Before we go, here's a recap of our top stories this hour. Chinese President Xi Jinping pays a state visit to Vietnam with a focus on cooperation, security, and strengthening ties. Dozens of babies from Gaza have been transferred to Egyptian hospitals for treatment and incubation. Plus, COP28 climate talks in Dubai are extended as parties fail to reach a consensus on fossil fuel phase-out. And that's a wrap for this hour's World Today here on CGTN. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.